Veltrax Prime was burning. But the sky didn't glow with fire. It glowed with silence. The kind of silence that comes after too many screams, when the only sound left is the low hum of orbital bombardment waiting to finish what the invaders started. Captain Lyra Juno gripped the rusted edge of the shelter hatch, her breathing sharp, shallow. The command bunker, once buried beneath meters of reinforced alloy, now sat barely covered in ash and melted stone. The city above, Miratel, was gone. Not overrun. Erased. The Chordati didn't conquer. They harvested. Entire cities, ripped from orbit with gravity hooks, their atmospheres stripped, their survivors taken for processing. Veltrax had been a thriving colony world under the Concord banner, agricultural, peaceful, and proudly independent. Now, just a countdown. A desperate signal. And a name whispered like a prayer. Is Earth listening? There had once been a fleet. 12 planetary defense corvettes and 2 aging destroyers. Gone in the first 10 minutes. The Chordati hadn't even deployed troops until the surface had stopped screaming. Now, strange metallic creatures moved through the rubble, skittering biomex designed to choke life. They released gas that made lungs boil and nerves misfire. Lyra had seen a man forget how to blink until his eyes burst. Every shelter, every hideaway, every resistance cell crushed. And still no response from Concord High Command. No reinforcements. No Earth. If anyone's out there, Lyra muttered into her cracked comms device, we have hours. Maybe less. She slumped against the wall, her breath leaving her chest like smoke. Outside, thunder rumbled, not from weather. From the Chordati mothership repositioning overhead. Somewhere deep in space, a signal passed through the edge of a dying pulsar. Encrypted in a long-dead Terran dialect. Buried in redshift noise. A distress beacon no one alive should have been able to read. And yet, in the shadow of a broken moon, something stirred. Back on Veltrax, 12-year-old Ian ran through the shattered husk of a school building, holding a message crystal to his chest. It wasn't encoded. It wasn't military. It was a recording. Lyra's, desperate, raw. A plea, not a command. We are still here. We remember who we are. We don't need saving. But we need to be seen before we're gone. Ian reached the makeshift transmitter. He wasn't supposed to know how to activate it. But his sister had been a tech. She'd taught him. Before they took her. He slotted the crystal into the port and whispered the only words he knew that might matter. Earth, please. At the edge of the galaxy, where charts turned to myth and dark space grew colder than silence itself, a relay beacon lit up. It wasn't supposed to. Not unless they were needed. Inside the black, behind a veil of distortion fields and reality dampers, something ancient activated. Not a fleet. Not a planet. A ship. The humans called it the Oathkeeper. It had no registry. No alliance. No transponder codes. It was built long before the Concord. Before the Chordati ever learned to build weapons. Before humanity asked permission to exist. It was a promise, forged in the fires of extinction-level wars. And now, it had heard Veltrax. Lyra stood above the ruined remains of the old Skywatch Tower, weapons shaking in her hands. The clouds had begun to churn. Not normal storm clouds. These twisted upward like something was breaking through the upper atmosphere from the other side. The Chordati noticed too. Their mothership's lower belly shifted. Ports opened. Charged plasma began to glow. A final cleansing. Veltrax's coordinates were being wiped from the star map. The same process that had ended Riven's moon. The same fate Miratel suffered. Lyra closed her eyes. We tried. The sky cracked. Not a metaphor. Not poetry. Cracked. A burning seam split the clouds, ripping like an old scar being torn open. And then, white. But not white. Not golden. Silver blue. Like frozen lightning forged into shape. A ship. Single. Silent. It didn't drop out of orbit. It descended, like a sword from the hand of a vengeful god. No markings. No sound. Except one. A single tone that echoed through every Chordati channel simultaneously. Humanity acknowledges. The Chordati opened fire instantly. Instinct. Every cannon on their mothership. All surface turrets. 5 orbital satellites. The air went white with energy blasts. But when the smoke cleared, the Terran ship hadn't moved. Not a scratch. Not even a heat distortion. Then it answered. Not with lasers. Not with missiles. With a pulse. Every Chordati weapon system within planetary range froze. Not disabled, overridden. Their ships drifted. Their AI systems self-terminated. Their command net looped a single phrase. You took children. You buried the screaming. Now you will listen. Lyra fell to her knees, watching as Corda-T skimmers began to crash from the sky. Not from weapons. From grief. The ship, the human ship, was broadcasting memory. Not files. Emotions. Millions of lives lost to Corda-T war crimes, played through the eyes of their victims. One by one the Corda-T fell apart. Some screamed. Some curled into fetal positions. Some simply shut down. Because no species, not even theirs, could stare directly into the soul of what they had done. The Terran ship hovered over Veltrax. No demand. No speech. Just presence. And the sky thundered in awe. Because against all odds, Earth had answered. Not with an army. Not with a warning. But with a ship that carried the pain of every world the galaxy had tried to forget. Lyra's comm crackled. A voice. Clear. Mel. Human. Captain Juno, this is the Oathkeeper. You are not alone. Begin evac protocols. We'll handle the rest. She covered her mouth. She couldn't even cry. Because somehow, that one voice felt like every life lost on Veltrax had reached back through death to pull her up again. And in the distance, the stars began to tremble. Because more ships were coming. Not hundreds. Not thousands. Just a few. Enough. Because that's all Earth ever needed to end a war. The Oathkeeper hovered above Veltrax Prime like a silent sentinel, untouched, unmoved, and unmistakably human. Its surface shimmered with ionized plasma waves, tech far beyond anything the Concorde had ever produced. There were no visible weapons. No engines. Not even a conventional bridge. Just presence. And from its core that memory pulse still radiated outward. Lyra Juno watched the Corda-T warforms crumble. The ones in the sky were already down. But now the ground units, those insectoid walkers and spiked crawling drones, had started glitching. Some just stopped moving. Others turned their weapons on each other as if confused or afraid. She'd never seen them afraid before. And yet here they were, trying to dig into the ground. Not retreating to orbit. Not signaling for help. Hiding. Her earpiece crackled again. Captain Juno. This is the Oathkeeper control interface. We have engaged empathy override on Corda-T neural-linked forces. Do not approach active zones. Secondary shockwave imminent. Lyra pressed the comms button. Her voice was shaky. She hadn't spoken to a real human in months. Who are you? How did you get here? Earth never responded. No one did. The reply came after a pause. Not cold. Not distant. Just heavy. Like it carried centuries in every syllable. We're not from the Concorde. We are what's left of promises Earth made before it forgot how to keep them. The sky above them shimmered again. From far beyond orbit, new points of light appeared, at first looking like stars. But they were moving. Fast. 3 more ships. Smaller than the Oathkeeper. Sleeker. Bone white with gold trim. No known registry. No IFF codes. Just the same core emblem etched into their hulls. A broken chain wrapped around a burning planet. Ian stood atop the transmitter tower, the wind pushing against his small frame. He stared at the new ships as they descended, almost lazily, as if they didn't fear being shot at. Because they knew. There was nothing left to shoot them. The boy didn't smile. Not yet. But he felt it. That strange alien thing he hadn't allowed himself to feel in weeks. Oh. In low orbit, the Corda-T command ships tried to re-establish neural sync. They failed. Whatever the Oathkeeper had broadcast, it hadn't just jammed them. It had overwritten them. Entire swarms of Corda-T drones were now mourning. Yes, grieving. Collapsing into circular formations and letting out low-frequency tones, almost like sobbing. It made no sense. These things weren't alive. They were biomechanical. But now, they felt something. And that was Earth's message. If you cannot understand mercy, we will teach you pain. If you cannot feel guilt, we will gift you memory. And if you erase lives, we will resurrect them in you. Down on the surface, Lyra moved through the ruins of Miratel with a detachment of survivors. Doctors, engineers, even a few children. Above them, one of the smaller Terran ships lowered to the city center. It didn't land. It hovered 6 meters above the rubble, and then projected a field downward, reconstructing the space beneath it. Not physically. Temporally. The survivors stared in awe as the street beneath them shimmered, showing the city as it was before the fall. People walking. Markets open. Children playing. A memory. This is what they took, a voice said over the comms. And this is what you are owed. From within the Oathkeeper, a new signal transmitted, Encrypted at first, then blasted openly across Corda T space. Not a warning. A broadcast. A visual feed began to play in every known Corda T frequency range, from military channels to civilian comms. It showed Veltrax before the siege. It showed children laughing. It showed Corda T landers arriving. It showed executions. It showed screams. These are your actions, the voice said, calm and echoing. This is your legacy. You erased our records. So now we will write yours for you. In every language. On every world. The Corda T High Overlord, safe aboard the flagship orbiting Tau 7, watched the broadcast in horror. The human voice was ancient, yes, but not filled with rage. Just certainty. And certainty was worse. Rage you could fight. Certainty? You survived it, or you didn't. Activate fleet. All of it, the Overlord barked. But the order didn't go through. Because the relay systems across 7 sectors had already been compromised. And the Oathkeeper hadn't even moved. In the refugee tunnels of Veltrax, Lyra finally received a full link to the Oathkeeper's command. A hologram appeared before her, grainy, flickering. It showed a man in old Terran combat armor, patched with archaic sigils and neural cords. His face was burned on one side. His eyes, glowing faintly blue. My name is Commander Roth Harvin. I was born on Mars during the collapse. I am not alive in the way you understand. But I remember. He paused. We were promised never again. But promises fade. So we buried ourselves inside the ship, with every voice the galaxy tried to forget. We waited. For someone to call us. He looked directly into her. You did. Lyra felt her knees weaken. Why us? Harvin's voice softened. Because you never stopped trying. Even when the rest of the Concord turned away. Even when Earth went quiet. You tried. And now, we try with you. Across the galaxy, worlds that had bowed to the Corda T began to shift. Old alliances cracked. New whispers rose. Earth has returned. They remember everything. The sky broke and it was us who bled. The Corda T Empire wasn't defeated in battle. It was undone by its own crimes finally being seen. And the Oathkeeper? It didn't stay. It left one ship behind, a marker. A monument to the lives lost and saved. The rest faded into deep space again. No hyperspace trail. No signature. Because humanity didn't return to reclaim the galaxy. They returned to remind it. We are not gods. We are not monsters. But when the forgotten call for help, we will tear the sky open, again. The Corda T Empire had no words for what was happening. Their databanks, once filled with histories written by conquest, now glitched with unwanted memories. Not human memories. Their own. Filtered through the Oathkeeper's systems, raw and unshielded. Atrocity after atrocity. Massacres recorded from the eyes of their soldiers. Unedited. Unforgiving. No music. No narrator. Just truth screaming. The Corda T High Overlord sat in the war chamber aboard the command Citadel Virex HAL, face blank, mandibles still. His generals were silent. Because across a dozen star systems, entire fleets had gone dark. Not destroyed. Just quiet. Ships hovering dead in space. Soldiers inside either comatose or catatonic. Weapons systems refusing to function. No AI interference. No EMP damage. Just a virus unlike any other. Memory. They'd expected rebellion to be loud, explosions, fleets, screaming. But this was quiet. Like rot under the skin. Like a judgment you couldn't fire back at. The Oathkeeper had passed through their territory like a ghost, and now every world it touched was remembering things they had been programmed to forget. Back on Veltrax Prime, the remaining survivors emerged from the underground. It wasn't safe, not completely. But the air no longer stung. The drones no longer hunted. And the sky, once choked in smoke and plasma, now revealed a single remaining Terran ship still watching silently from orbit. The Sentinel-class monument, left by the Oathkeeper. No weapons. No crew. Just a continuous projection over the ruins, the faces of those who died, slowly fading in and out across the skyline. Veltrax had become a living memorial. Lyra Juno sat beside the grave of her lieutenant, Marek. Her side was still wrapped in makeshift bandages. Ian sat nearby, sketching the silhouette of the Oathkeeper from memory. Are they coming back? The boy asked. Lyra didn't answer at first. She looked toward the projection in the sky, watching the images cycle. Civilians, fighters, children. They never really left, Ian, she finally said. They're part of the stars now. And the stars are watching. Elsewhere, deep within Concord space. The great Senate of Calendros convened in panic. Dozens of species, hundreds of representatives, all screaming over one another. Holograms flickered with the Oathkeeper broadcast, looped recordings of Cordati war crimes, of Veltrax survivors staring into the camera, of a ship descending like divine wrath. Some called it forgery. Some called it a Terran hoax. But the most fearful voices said nothing. Because they recognized the architecture. They recognized the voice. And they whispered words that hadn't been heard for millennia. Project Revenant. Echo-class memory ships. Those were myths. Earth burned those ships, didn't they? But the question no one could answer wasn't what it was why now? Why, after 20 generations of silence, had humanity moved? And why only now, when the last of their colonies were almost forgotten? Back on the Cordati homeworld, political collapse had begun. Not through rebellion. Through shame. Mass protests broke out, not demanding victory but accountability. In species bred for control and domination, something new was spreading. Conscience. The Cordati hadn't been defeated in battle. They had been shown a mirror. And for the first time in galactic history, the most feared species in the sector was questioning its own existence. Meanwhile, deep in Terran dark space, beyond mapped sectors in regions hidden behind black holes and gravitational dead zones, the Oathkeeper floated in solitude. Inside, Commander Roth Harvin stood in a chamber lined with stasis pods. Some were empty. Some still glowing. He touched one gently, his fingers trembling against the glass. They remembered, he whispered. The AI beside him, Vestra, spoke in a voice like wind moving through memory. Phase 1 is complete. Veltrax is free. The archive has grown. And Phase 2, he asked. Awaiting your command, Commander? He paused. Then turned to the center of the room, where a star map shimmered with new light. Red markers glowed, each representing a silenced world, each tagged with a date and name. Dozens. Then hundreds. Each one lost. Forgotten. Buried by lies. Until now. We told them, Roth said quietly, if they erased us again, we'd erase the stars, Vestra finished. Back on Veltrax, Lyra stood on the platform overlooking the new refugee shelter zone. People were rebuilding, not because they were told to, but because they had something to believe in again. A comm officer approached her with a data pad. Ma'am. Message for you. Lyra tapped it open. It wasn't text. It was a visual, a rotating symbol. A burning tree encased in chains. Below it, a message. World 2 of 73. One memory reignited. Many still frozen. When you are ready, we welcome your voice. Lyra stared for a long moment. Then nodded. Send a reply. What should I say? She didn't smile. She didn't cry. She just whispered the only thing that mattered. We remember. And above them all, the stars shimmered. Because Earth's silence wasn't absence. It was warning. And now that silence had broken. The galaxy would never be the same again. The message was simple. It didn't come with orders or protocol. Just a line, etched into the screen like it had waited centuries to be said. If you're still breathing, then someone needs your story. Lyra read it over and over again as the sunlight of Veltrax Prime broke through its cloud-wounded sky. It felt unnatural, almost cruel, after so much darkness. But it was real. Survivors moved slowly through the wreckage. No one gave commands anymore. They didn't need to. Something in them had shifted. The weight of extinction had been lifted, not by victory but by remembrance. They were not forgotten. They were not alone. In orbit, the Sentinel Monument ship continued its projection. Across every quadrant of Veltrax's equatorial belt, holograms danced through the ashes, showing life as it had been. Not to taunt the survivors but to anchor them. This is what was. This is what was taken. This is what endures. Every 10 hours, the ship updated its memory pulse, absorbing survivor recordings, lost data logs, even personal voice memos. Children recorded bedtime stories. Doctors uploaded field notes on the wounded. Engineers detailed the cost of every broken turbine. The ship collected it all. Because the Oathkeeper was not just built to fight. It was built to remember what no one else would. Aboard the Oathkeeper, Roth Harvin stood in the vast Hall of Echoes, where every recorded world lost to galactic betrayal was preserved. The walls shifted constantly, like light through shattered glass, each refracting a moment in time, looping endlessly. He passed a wall that showed Siren 4, the first colony that had asked for help and received only silence. Then Polaris Fall, where 30,000 civilians had encrypted their deaths into music. Then Veltrax, shimmering newest in the sequence, still updating. They will come for us now, Vestra said beside him. Let them, Roth whispered. We were built for when they forgot what we sacrificed. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the ripple had spread. Worlds under Corti control began to resist, not with weapons but with stories. Citizens hacked display grids to show Veltrax's transmission. Academics cited Oathkeeper footage in legal assemblies. Children carved human faces into city walls. And on planets that had once mocked Earth's barbaric sentimentality, people began asking dangerous questions. What if the humans were right? What if survival isn't enough? What if memory is the only justice we have left? The Concord Senate tried to spin it, tried to silence the footage, blamed psychic warfare, called it an elaborate human deception. But it was too late, because memory, once freed, spreads like fire. Back on Veltrax, Ian sat with other children under a collapsed dome, watching a recovered holodisc labeled Old Earth, Ocean Sounds. None of them had seen the ocean. None of them had touched water that didn't sting. But they listened. And somehow, the sound of waves crashing over sand became sacred. What is that? A girl whispered. It's what Earth sounds like when it isn't angry, Ian replied. Lyra stood beside the half-rebuilt transmitter tower. Not to signal help this time, but to answer. She stared into the camera. Her face burned, uniform torn. But her voice, clear. This is Captain Lyra Juno of Veltrax Prime. To any world that hears me, we survived. Not because we were strong, but because someone remembered we existed. You don't need weapons. You need witness. Tell your story. The Oathkeeper will hear it. Earth may be quiet, but its echoes are louder than ever. Aboard the Oathkeeper, deep in the dark, the star map pulsed again. Another world. Another signal. Another whisper in the void. We remember. Vestra's voice hummed gently through the chamber. Would you like to rest, Commander? Roth Harvin looked to the wall showing Veltrax. It was already fading into peace. He closed his eyes. Not yet. He placed his hand on the console, and across 1,000 forgotten routes, the Oathkeeper began to awaken new protocols. Not for war. Not for conquest. But for testimony. Humanity had been silent for 20,000 years. Now, the galaxy could not stop hearing them. Final transmission. To the stars that tried to erase us. We were never just survivors. We were the story that refused to be forgotten. And now, if we burn, you remember us. Milky Way, if this story gripped your heart, your mind, or your soul, if it made you feel like humanity still has something to say to the stars, subscribe now to the Void Narratives. Every story is a reckoning. Every tale, a warning. And the next time silence falls, we'll be the ones who break it. Flying Saucer, subscribe to never miss the next strike from Earth. We're not done. Not even close.